somebody that opened up a cat yoga studio got $100,000. My fundraiser for Black women's history of basketball in the time where women's sports is the only thing that anyone is talking about has raised $500. So it's very, it's very clear.
Come on, y'all. When it comes to the preservation of Black women in basketball, what was the moment that changed you?
I would definitely say the business of basketball, specifically women's basketball, true representation for me is not just uplifting just the athletes, it's are they in leadership? So when it comes to grants, you just have to be really clear about who you're impacting, who your audience is, and what are the exact things that you're gonna do. I mean, as far as Save My Life, you know, I come from a family where addiction has torn my family apart.
Hey, yo, we are back. This is Misha Horsey. This is another episode of The Business of Basketball. Today we have Jeannine Kayembe Oro. So thank you for being here. I appreciate you. Before we get into your museum and the why behind that, it's so important to think about your roots. I want to know, I'm curious to know what was and what is the foundation of where you came from, because you came from California, right? Not a Philly native, a Cali native, but you're here in Philly now.
Been here for a minute.
Yeah, so I want to know what part of your childhood, what's the earliest moment in your childhood that shaped who you are today?
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate you. The history. Ooh, I mean, one, I would like to say just like thank you to all the Black women coaches that I had in my life. I started playing basketball at a really young age, you know, just like in my park recreational league. And as I got a little bit older and started playing AAU and things like that, and even in high school, I had incredible Black women coaches. But I come from an immigrant family. My mom's from the Philippines, dad is from the Congo. And, you know, as I played basketball, I had a little bit of support as far as like getting to practice and making sure I was signed up for these things. But one of the biggest things that impacted my life was I had a family member that played in the WNBA. I got to go to the first game, Sparks versus New York Liberty. That was at the Forum. I totally remember that day so vivid. There was like a little carnival in the parking lot and, you know, all these little games and stuff you could play. But my family member, her name is Mwadi Mabika. She was number 4 on the Sparks. She played with Lisa Leslie, Tamika Dixon, you know, all of some of the greatest players that we know, Allison Feaster. And I would say, I think it was probably her 27th birthday or something like that. But I used to visit my dad in LA. I lived with my mom a little bit further out. And he was like, you know, come on, we're going to go to Mwadi's house for her birthday. And for her birthday, she gifted me her jersey, signed, game worn, her player edition Beanie Baby, a little Sparks lunchbox, you remember like the 10 lunchbox with all the graphics on it, and the warm-up shirt and the shorts as well. And that was like the first piece to my collection. And that was incredible to me. First of all, I wore it the moment she handed it to me. I even tried to iron it and I like messed it up a little bit because it was like silk. I forget the material, nylon or something. But yeah, so being Congolese, my family has ties to the Mutombo family. My youngest sister married into that family. And Dikembe Mutombo was the person who brought Mwadi here and immigrated her here in, I think I want to say like 1996 was the Atlanta Olympics. So yeah, so she played on the Sparks. And, you know, I got to watch her pretty much up until she retired or up until I graduated high school. But I got to love this game that I had no idea that you could actually be a professional at. You know, you like saw Cheryl Miller in college and things like that. I mean, I'm a little young to have seen her win the championship. But you know, seeing that going to the WNBA was a viable career as a young Black girl that meant everything to me. So I got to see this kind of role model who, I saw her go to her practices. I would go to the games. She would take me home if they lost. I would have to find a ride if they won. Because they was going out afterwards.
Yes.
And I just got to meet all the different players, and just kind of also I got to meet a lot of the Lakers as well, because they would come to the games.
Kobe?
So I met Kobe in a different instance when I got a little bit older, mainly Shaq, Derek Fisher, Rick Fox. And I also got to be exposed to this community of women who love sports. Because, outside of, me playing basketball, it was just like parents at AAU. I never got to see women sports fans until I was in that building.
Yeah.
So that's definitely like the roots of like what started my collection. So that jersey then turned into over 200 items, ranging from photos to lunch boxes to Beanie Babies and bobbleheads.
Yeah.
And, all the things that I have today.
That's dope. I want to go back to what you mentioned about your folks being from the Congo. How did that also shape who you are, right? Like, is there, every family, every ethnicity has a culture that's ingrained in the way that they think and the way that they feel about opportunity.
So my dad is from the Congo. My mom is from the Philippines.
Yeah.
I actually was raised Filipino because I was raised with my mom.
Yeah.
And so either way, coming from an immigrant household, there is a lot of there's a mindset that's like, you got to work twice as hard to get, half as far. So make sure all the opportunities you're taking are really ones that that can make money. My mom, of course, wanted me to be a nurse, a doctor, a lawyer. Same thing as my dad. He definitely wanted me to be, a lawyer, a business person, some sort of capitalist job, but what I saw from them and how they actually were, both my parents are accountants, but they were people that were in service. My dad, he traveled the world with Mother Teresa and did his like missions and things like that, feeding people and helping different villages and that were in need to build things and things like that. I always saw my mom helping out her friends that didn't have things. So I really turned out to be someone who had a career and a life of service to community, versus let me work to be of service and make money from community. And I think that's how I got into being an artist, being expressive, being in community with other artists. And that's how I got to be like being environmentalist, thinking about urban agriculture, food, which I didn't think that would be my trajectory when I was young. When I was young, I thought I was just going to be a hooper for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
But then once I found art, poetry, and then this artistic community we were really in service of each other, a bunch of young people who kind of were chosen family to each other. And we used this art to, communicate to each other, ourselves, the community, to talk about really deep issues. And I think that definitely comes from what my parents and my family are versus like the careers they have.
Yeah. So I want to go to the pivotal moment for when you said there is a deficit here in women's basketball, particularly Black women in basketball, that you recognize that you needed to be a part of preservation, right, of the history of Black women in basketball. What was your actual feeling? What were you thinking? What happened to make you say, I'm going to be the one to be the agent of change? What was the moment that changed you?
I would definitely say coaching. I coached at Girard College, and we know Girard College is a school for young people that need extra support because maybe their families aren't in the position to support them. And those kids live on campus. And as I was coaching, I just saw the inequity that was happening for the girls' basketball team. It's a group of, all young Black girls, And I started to think about what type of future will these girls have. And when you see, this was, I would say this was in 2022. So this was just at the beginning of women's sports, uprise, right? And then studying things like the WNBA, like the different leagues that, like EuroLeague and things like that. When I saw the posters, when I saw the merch, when I saw who did the interviews, when I saw who was the coaching staff, and seeing what type of future am I putting these girls into, they did not match the faces of these girls. Like, why aren't these girls being represented, And then I also saw that, like, so even if you take these girls all the way, are they going to be represented when they get there? So it's like they were definitely living in the shadows. So I think that moment of looking at these fifth graders and saying they want a career in basketball, how do I get them from point A to point B? It didn't look like there would be a point B for them unless they were an athlete. There was no way where I could be like, of course you can be, in the back office. Cause when you look at back office, it's like, oh no one looks like you here.
Yeah.
So I think seeing that inequity as a coach really pushed me to say, okay, let me develop an institution that can champion these stories in a way that brings these girls the visibility that they deserve.
Yeah, that's powerful. And I also think that I want to highlight the word institution, because historically, and even still to this day, Black businesses, Black initiatives, it's hard to have institutional backing. So when you were thinking about this cause, this initiative, this business, did you have a fear that there wouldn't be much support in bringing this to fruition? And the second part of that is, what is the belief now that you can really push this forward and make this happen?
I mean, as someone who has started businesses before, starting this one, I 100% believe in this, because I'm filling a gap that's not there. You have Black women that are in Hall of Fames, that are in museums and things like that, but there is not a space that's dedicated to our history. Sometimes I do doubt myself. I do doubt myself on if this is an actual viable thing, because like I posted this the other day because I'm doing a fundraiser right now for my open runs, and somebody that opened up a cat yoga studio got $100,000. My fundraiser for Black women's history of basketball in the time where women's sports is the only thing that anyone is talking about has raised $500. So it's very, it's very clear.
Come on, y'all. We're going to put the link in the bio. God.
It's very clear on what people want to support. You know what I mean? But again, I want authentic support. The $500 that I've received so far are from people that I know that will support me from here until the end of time, versus, oh, let me just drop $10 for cats and yoga for people. That support is just going to be the $10 and that's it. So I know that patience is key within this work. And I'm not doing this for money. I'm not doing this for the recognition. I know museums, art, things like that, this stuff is going to live 100 years past me. So I just want to make sure that the institution that I'm building has the funds that it needs to live for the 100 years past me. So it's like, if other people aren't seeing the value of this now, which is okay, I see the value of it, and I have to put every single cent, every single moment that I can to investing into this as much as possible until people catch on.
Help me see what it is that you are creating. I know it's a museum. Help me see, like, what are the core details of the museum? Are you looking for just exhibitions and partnerships? Or is it you are creating a brick and mortar museum?
So the So the pilot of the brick and mortar will open on Broad Street in 2027. We're dropping that here right now. Nobody knows that
Exclusive,
except for y'all.
baby.
That's the pilot space. The goal is to have a brick and mortar museum that is a women's sports tourist, attraction where people can come. I think Philly is the perfect place for it because women's basketball in Philadelphia goes all the way back to the 1930s, 1920s. That's been documented. I'm sure we've been hooping since basketball was alive, in the 1800s. But as far as, documented women's basketball history goes to the 1930s. And so I think it's the perfect space and place. The goal of the museum is to, one, host the collection. Right now, the collection is just in boxes and in places where like people need to see this. A lot of the girls that I coach or talk to that play basketball have no idea who Allison Feaster is, even though she's in the back office of the Celtics and just won a championship with her friends. Mm-hmm. They don't know some of these things. They don't even know women were playing basketball this far back. Mm-hmm. They don't know Yolanda Laney. They don't know these core moments in history that made it to where they can play basketball. So definitely the brick and mortar to host the collection and be a, teaching space for history. As I've been doing this work though, one, because I'm an artist, I've been seeing I don't know if you've seen that Instagram where they have the basketball photo and then the art photo. Mm-hmm. So something like that, like there has to be, because I'm an artist, there has to be some sort of artistic component. We're piloting that next week at Art Basel with a bunch of different artists who love basketball and they make women's basketball art.
That's cool. Yeah.
Ashley Teamer, she's an incredible mixed media artist. She's been collecting cards since the early 2000s and makes incredible collages based off of women's basketball trading cards. So we're featuring her work. So I want to be able to support artists that are also making artwork about basketball, because the memorabilia and things, that's like art. It's design, it was made for fans to wear or to, have in their home. Mm-hmm. But these Black women are making art that speaks to the culture of basketball in a way that has a little bit more depth. So there's the art aspect as well. And then since I'm a coach and since I work for Philly Youth Basketball, I've been seeing the importance to have an institution that's dedicated to supporting young Black women and women of color to further their careers in the business of basketball.
Yeah.
Because it's not there unless they go to an Ivy League or school or whatever. They don't know that they can play overseas. They don't know. All they need is some highlight reels from high school, get their stats together, and they can send that off to agents. They don't know that you can be a trainer. They don't know you can be a seamstress and sew the letters and numbers onto the jerseys.
Yep.
There's so many ways and avenues to go back to your title, the business of basketball. No one's teaching these girls that. So I think that's going to be a very important component as far as educating folks on what opportunities are there.
That's dope. Thank you for tuning in to the Business of Basketball. I really, really appreciate your support. When I looked at our analytics, I realized that 95% of people who watch our episodes are not subscribed. And so in order to have bigger guests, continue our amazing production that we put on for you, we need you to subscribe. So look at our past episodes, share them with a friend, like, comment, subscribe to our channel. It only helps us get bigger and better for you. Thank you so much. I want to go back to the museum of the decades that will be displayed in the museum, and what's the visual story that you're going to be telling within the space?
So the goal is 100 years of Black women's basketball from 1920 to 2025, whichever year, 2027.
Yeah.
And we know that, of course, it dates back before that. I think the earliest in New York, I think is 1910 with the New York Girls. But for Philadelphia, in the late 1930s, early 1940s, the Tribune, which is the Black newspaper here, they sponsored their own women's basketball team. And that's actually who's on my shirt,
There
the
we
Tribune
go.
Girls.
Yes.
So they had incredible players, but they played against this team from Germantown called the Germantown Hornets. And the leader of that team was Ora Washington. She is one of the most, I would say, incredible Black women athletes of this time. Not only did she win 11 basically like Negro League championships after she left the Hornets and went to play for the Tribune, but she also was a tennis champion. I mean, she had trophies. There's a picture of her trophies lined up on the table of her playing tennis. On top of that, all of her basketball trophies. She was so good to the point where I think it was her late 30s, early 40s. She played in, I don't know if it was a charity game, but she played against Althea Gibson, who we know is one of the best tennis players ever, and beat her.
Wow.
So
you don't hear that story.
You do not hear that story at all. So once I started digging into the Tribune Girls, and seeing the history of where Philly women's basketball really kind of started, that's what took me into. So now you have 1940. You have there's like a war going on in between them. So a lot of those women get shipped off to different bases, and and they were playing basketball on the bases.
Wow. So
I have some photos of different Black women in the Women's Army Corps playing basketball at a base in Arizona. So then you get to 1940s, 1950s. I don't have too much stuff within 1950s. I'm still kind of digging. I have some like newspaper articles and things like that of like women starting to play. And then you have segregation starting to kind of not break down, but you have some more intermingling. So white players are playing Black players, which that didn't happen before. We only played each other. Then when you get to the 60s and 70s, that's when we start to ball.
Right.
So I did some research with the librarian at the Charles Blockson Museum at Temple, and we have some Ebony magazine clippings of like Black women playing sports and like football, tennis, and things like that, and playing basketball. So now we get to play in schools outside of just HBCUs. So that's going to be displayed as well. But once we get into the 60s and 70s, now we're playing. The NCAA wasn't created just yet. I think it was created in the late 70s or early 80s, but now we're getting to play in, college, and it's kind of desegregated. Then we get to the 80s, boom, that's when you have that really famous photo from Kodak, and that's when Cheryl Miller, Yolanda Laney, that there's like a whole group of Black women who basically made the NCAA Sweet 16 that year. And we know that Cheney wins that.
Yeah.
And then after Cheney, then Cheryl Miller comes after that. So the 80s, then I have some stuff right before the WNBA. There was the ABL, the American Basketball League. And that's when Dawn Staley played in like the Rage, and there was the San Jose Lasers, which the owners of the San Jose Lasers are now the owners of the Valkyries, because that was in the Bay Area.
Wow.
So I have some stuff from the San Jose Lasers, and then boom, we get to the WNBA.
Yeah.
So the WNBA definitely makes up a lot of my collection because, that was my first piece that I got. And then from there, just starting to collect things because people did not value, especially like 5-6 years ago, I could buy stuff for 99 cents.
Yeah.
I'm talking about jerseys, Cheryl Swoops, like heavy hitters, $5, $6. I just bought, maybe a couple years ago, it was like 100 pins from the 2000 championship Olympic team. It's like $200.
Wow.
And like on that team is Cheryl Swoops, Dawn Staley, Lisa Leslie, Ruthie Bolton Holyfield, the dream team. $50 for these pins. So what I saw is that a lot of people were really undermining our history and like trying to get rid of it. So I said, all right, I'm buying it up.
Yes. You mentioned some names, some of whom we know. We hear a lot, I would say, now with Yolanda Laney, because her daughter, Banaja Laney, plays professionally. We hear obviously Dawn Staley. She had a historical moment where she had, I think her contract, her coaching contract, $22 million. It goes down to history for how she was able to make that happen, and she was the first Black woman to do that. We hear about those names often. Who are the people that we don't hear about that are in history that have obviously not accomplished that, but have done some really dope things? You already mentioned a few names, but is there anybody else who we're missing that the audience needs to know about?
I say this all the time, and we talk about her, but not enough. Maya Moore for president. Just Maya Moore, Maya Moore for president. For folks that don't know, she left basketball, became a lawyer, and and worked on the case for her now husband because he was wrongfully convicted of a crime. Like being the Michael Jordan of basketball, leaving
and still killing it,
becoming a lawyer, like that to me is one of the most incredible things. And a lot of people don't know Yolanda Laney was also a DA as well. So she was a lawyer as well, but whew. So I would say definitely Maya Moore. We do talk about her a lot, but I don't think we talk about her enough. Lynette Woodard, incredible basketball player.
Yeah.
There is this whole debate. So like I said before, remember the NCAA wasn't created until later on, but technically she holds the scoring record for college women's basketball because she holds it before. So right now, Caitlin Clark holds it, right? But that's because she was in the NCAA. Lynette Woodard still has more points than Caitlin Clark. But the only reason why they don't recognize her is because she wasn't in the NCAA because she was born a couple years earlier. You know what I mean? So I think that's very important to note.
What is the business of this? Like we talked about what it'll look like. What does it take for this to come to fruition from a monetary standpoint? Like I know you're doing currently some fundraising now.
Yeah.
But what does it take to, like, what would be the cost of getting memorabilia? Is it expensive to start something like this?
Well, I mean, in this point in time, yeah. Like, there's no way, like, you'll be able to find the things that I have at the amounts or the moments that I've purchased them or, like, the moments that I've been at. But as far as the business goes, right now, I'm receiving a lot of grants.
Okay.
Because I'm an artist, because there is this artistic and historic preservation aspect of the work. A lot of organizations, are funding that type of work. I want to say a lot, but there are organizations that fund that work. And I really do think my goal is to get endowments from 1 to 5 NBA players. We know the WNBA players need these new contracts before they can start giving money like that.
Put their hand out. Because they are trying to
They're trying to get the money in.
Yeah.
But I feel like, Kyrie's like really into his culture. There's a lot of different basketball players that I feel like that have foundations and things like that. I know we do clinics, and I know we do whatever different community engagements, but I do think that there's going to be at least a couple NBA players that are like, you know what, I value this history and I will endow you $1 million so that it can live for 100 years from now.
Yeah.
So until I get my brick and mortar, which, I'll probably charge like a small admission. So that'll be a thing. I did some research on how much money the Hall of Fame makes. I think it's in Indiana or something like that. The Basketball Hall of Fame, the Naismith Hall of Fame. So they make a couple $1 million just off of visitors.
Okay.
So there is like a potential revenue there, like after getting a brick and mortar. But again, they have a lot of men's basketball stuff and things like that. So you already know money is kind of built into that audience already. And I know that from the women's standpoint, it'll be a little bit harder. And from the Black women's standpoint, it's going to be even harder.
Yeah.
So, my goal is to just continue to get grants, definitely do some fundraising. But the fundraising is just really to see who's with me.
Got you.
You know what I mean? It's kind of like a test. It's like, y'all with me or nah?
Right.
And the ones that aren't, that's good to know. And the ones that are, I'm like, all right, let's continue on this ride. So, you know, I'm never going to sell any of my memorabilia. I'll say that.
Okay.
That's not going to be a part of the business plan. I have doubles of a lot of different things just in case like something gets wet or, you know, God forbid, whatever. But as far as like selling these key items, that's not in my business plan at all.
I want to go back to when you talked about grants, because there are people who have nonprofits who probably listen to this show, and the grant writing process, from what I know, is like a long process, hard process, sometimes emotional because you may get your no's.
You get the no's.
You know, so what would you say has been a best practice that you've used to receive grants, whether it's in the language, whether it's like your mission has to be really strong? You know, what works? How have you been able to receive grants from the grant writing process?
So it kind of just depends on the market, right?
Yeah.
Like right after, you know, all the uprisings and all of that, if you had something that had to do with the empowerment of people of color, you was getting money. If over the past couple years, everything has been about narrative change. So if you're working in media or working as a creator or artist that has to do with shifting the narrative around a specific group of people, if you can hone in on who your people are, what you're trying to shift because of a deficit that's happening that's nuanced to that community. So for me, it's women's basketball and Black women's basketball players and visibility. So I was able to hone in on that and get grants that really spoke to, all right, how do I make this community, which is Black women who are athletes, how do I create a space to preserve their history and then to document the history that's being made, you know, day to day. So when it comes to grants, you just have to be really clear about who you're impacting, who your audience is, and what are the exact things that you're going to do. Some people will be like, oh, we're going to have this event and that's going to be visibility. No, we're going to have an event at this park. We're expecting, 500 people. 250 of these people are from this community. 250 of these people will be coming from social media or however else we're marketing the event. We'll be serving food. Like, they want to know the exact details.
I think too, a part of your work is a significant amount of research to know what the void is and also how to make this a success. Within your research, what makes a museum successful, to make you believe that this mission, this vision, this powerful movement that you're creating, what will make yours successful as well?
I think for me, when it comes to having the brick and mortar, location is going to be key. That's why we're going to open up on Broad Street for the pilot. Because, it's just accessible. You can get there. People know. You say Broad Street, cool.
Yeah.
Same thing with the museum. You cannot miss the Philadelphia Museum of Art.
And with every brick and mortar, you got to find revenue streams, right, to sustain. Outside of the visitors that you talked about in your museum, are there other revenue streams that you thought about?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you have the different watch bar, like the women's sports bars that are popping up. I think that's an interesting business model to add into the space. Okay. I think that, if I continue to go like the educational establishment route, those are bigger grants. That's money that, like, right now I'm getting like 30 to 50,000. Once I become like a space for education, you can get 200,000, 500,000, because they see you as an educational establishment. So it's really, am I going to go the entertainment route or am I going to go the educational route? Will I maybe have both? So I think I'm playing with what a business plan could look like. But I'm trying to keep the overhead very low so that the money goes back into the young women who are going to be a part of the space, part of the education of the space, and a part of, just the preservation of the collection.
Yeah, that's dope. And I think too, like, our audience obviously are people who are either navigating their pathway to basketball, whether they're in it or they aspire to be in it. I think that they don't recognize the significance of what basketball can do for your life. And so for maybe the younger audience, my question to you is, what did basketball teach you about your identity that you didn't necessarily learn from somewhere else, right? Whether you maybe didn't learn it through art, but sport is just a specific thing that you are part of that you don't recognize how many life lessons or people you meet.
So, I mean, definitely a plethora of things. Some things that are the most memorable is one is the discipline.
Mm-hmm.
Even though you don't think you're using athletic discipline everywhere, you just are. If you're on time to practice, you're going to be on time to work. You're going to be on time to whatever the thing is that is an opportunity that is, that is going to make your life, that will change your life and make you successful. I think for me, I mentioned earlier, I definitely grew up in an Asian household because I am, I'm mixed. And I had a coach who, and I wore my afro today because I thought of Coach. Hi, Coach D. I came out wearing an afro one of my games, and she said, she said, put that hair back. I said, what you mean, Coach? I got my fro out. She said, do you know about the Black Panthers? Do you know about the Buffalo Soldiers? I was like, no, Coach, I'm about to play this. Hey, you gave me what to, like, what do you mean? She said, put your hair up or you're not playing because you don't understand the political reference and importance of wearing an afro. And I was like, ooh, okay. So I went, read my little books, read about the Black Panthers, and was like, wow, this is a statement of Blackness, of Black culture. And I realized that basketball, it's a part of every culture now in the world, but basketball is really central to Black culture.
Yep.
Even if you didn't play, your cousin did, you went to the game. Even if you didn't look at a basketball, you had a jersey, you had some sort of sports basketball memorabilia, whether it be the Jordan sneakers or however. So it really connected me, I feel like, to my Blackness and my Black community, starting with that moment with my coach. And that's something, as like someone who has an Asian mom and grew up in an Asian household, that was something that I wasn't necessarily taught by my family. They weren't able to teach that to me. So I think like whatever community it is that you're in, like I was a reflection of that. So it made me think about what it meant to be a young Black woman playing basketball with this afro on the court, in the suburbs of Los Angeles.
Yeah.
I think one of my things that I was not great at as a player was being accountable. You had some players who were just like, all right, coach, that was my fault. Let me go get the ball. Versus I'll be like, no, she ain't passed it the right way and woo, woo, woo. So I missed the layup and
Yeah.
Versus me just saying, yo, that was on me. Yeah, exactly. My bad. We out. Net. Get it out the net. Let's roll. So I'm looking back at that now like, oh, dang, I could have been a better teammate had I been more accountable. So accountability, discipline, culture were some of the really, like, those are the big three that I've learned from basketball that have like made me solid in my identity and who I am today.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think also one word you're missing is confidence.
Yeah.
Because you are right now going towards an unconventional path. Unconventional in the way of you are combining art, culture, sport, advocacy, all in one initiative, which is dope. And so that says a lot to your confidence and to even have the courage to start something like that. Considering our current climate and the history of, our country, right? When it comes to Black initiatives, Black entrepreneurship, things of that nature. So it takes a lot of confidence and courage to do that. So shout out to you on that.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you, just following up on like the audience and the younger audience, how can your current work serve as a blueprint for how to create unconventional pathways in basketball and like really avoiding the traditional route of coaching, playing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even being in the front office? This is a totally different pathway that is unheard of in basketball.
I think it's really making space for your creativity. I feel like because I'm an artist and I was an artist first before an athlete, it really made the space for me to, because I've made so many paintings, films, short films, drawings, whatever, like you make your drafts. You have drafts of things, and then, all right, that didn't work. So that don't mean you just stop drawing and painting and making music or stop the beat or whatever. Like, you switch it up, you try again. That's what I would stress to the young people is invest in your ideas, let your creativity really guide you, and then you will make something that is for you. Because it's for everyone, but it's really for me and my collection, right? It's a place that I wish I could be. Like, I wish I could go right now to a museum and just learn about all the history of Black women's basketball.
Yeah.
Like, I want to go there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if anyone else will go with me. I know a bunch of friends will be like, yo, that sounds dope. When are we out?
I'm in there. Sure.
You feel me? So, but I didn't realize that that's what I wanted to do until I let myself go there. Cause I was like, Jay, you got all this stuff. Like, you're just keeping it and you're this safe. And like, what are you doing with it? And like, are you going to show people? Are you just going to wear the jerseys out to games and hope people notice that this is a Cheryl Swoops unlimited edition for Mitchell and Ness? Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Hope someone taps you and it's like, that was about me. But I was like, okay, what is a place that I would want to go to that had all of these things? And I was just like, oh, okay, a museum. But I let my creativity take me there. So I feel like when it comes to building out ideas that, that start off as ideas and then are made into reality, it's a little bit harder unless you have that creative spirit. So I always challenge my girls. I'm like, do you draw? Do you paint? Do you sing? Do you dance? Like, what's your other thing that you do? And once you kind of have those things and marry them both, I chose art and in this whole entire artistic world and took sports, and I love sports, and I was like, boom.
Yeah.
Okay, this is the place.
So before we get to our quick picks part of the show, I have a question for you, and I want you to speak directly to the camera, to this young Black girl. So if every young Black girl who plays basketball walked through your museum, what is the one truth you want them to walk out believing about themselves?
I would say to that young Black girl that from what she sees on these walls, from all of these women, every jersey, every pin, every sneaker that was worn by these incredible Black women, you can be that too. As long as you believe in yourself and have, support, whether it's your coaches, your family, your friends, you can accomplish anything that these women accomplished. And you can also be legendary in your own right, in your own way.
I love it. So we finished the show with our grateful to the game concept. And I want you to finish this sentence. I am grateful to basketball because.
I'm grateful to basketball because it brought me a community of women that made me who I am today.
Same. I feel all of that.
Yeah. Thank you to my coaches, my different teammates. Even after leaving, coming back to the sport as an adult, I just get to be a part of this incredible community of athletes that really do care, really do care about the future and the girls that are, coming up behind us. And yeah, I just appreciate the game for that. Definitely was a part of saving my life. Art, basketball, definitely saved my life, made me who I am today.
Yeah. And save your life. Can you add a little bit more? It's important information.
Yeah. I mean, as far as save my life, I come from a family where addiction is really, has torn my family apart. And without having the outlet to write about these things and without being on the court for hours and hours at night, we lived across the street from the park. So I used to be at the park when things got too hectic. I would just be hooping, call my friends, call my basketball coach, go to practice. Like, it was an escape when I've had some of the roughest times in my life. And even now as an adult, dealing with everything that's going on in the world and just trying to grow up and be an adult, I also play flag football as well, but playing football, playing basketball, those are those moments where every time we get on the court at my open run, everyone is just like, yo, this is my therapy. Like, therapy is $150 per hour. Open runs is free.
Yeah.
A little bump, a little cardio. This really helps with my mental health so that I can continue to, stay strong, not just physically, but also mentally, because of what the game does and how you get to zone out and just see the floor. And, you could just feel the wind as you sprinting down the court.
Meditation.
It's the meditation. So I think like growing up, all these different things happening in my life, and the basketball really was just that escape and being able to like be in myself and, just kind of me, the court and the ball.
Yeah, and all those things contributed to who you are today. And I want to personally say thank you for your work. Thank you for this connection. And obviously, any way that this show can support, that I can personally support. Yeah. This is just one of many ways that I will continue to do that. For those people who are looking to donate, I know you have a GoFundMe, so we will definitely link it in our comments in the description of this episode. Cool. Whether there are any other ways that they can follow, support your journey and your initiative.
Yeah, I mean, we're on Instagram. We're BWBB Museum. You can just Google Black Women's Basketball Museum. Of course, it's always great to follow us. And I would say if you're friends with anyone who's an NBA player, WNBA player, veteran, Olympian, whatever, please tell them about this, about my work, about the museum. The goal is to continue to, build a community of folks who are really interested in preserving this history. And I think the best folks to do it are the folks that have been a part of it. But, it's not also just about the pros. Like if you feel like there are Black women in your community who have done historic things with the game of basketball, please reach out, have them reach out. I would love to have them be a part of the collection, whether it be their jersey or a photo or whatever it is, because I do want to expand the collection to not just professional sports, but also community sports as well.
That's dope. Well, thank you for being here on the Business of Basketball.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you.
That's a wrap. It's another episode of Business of Basketball. Again, I'm your host, Misha Horsey. I'll see you on the next one. So, quick picks. I give you either a statement or like this or that type of situation.
Let's go.
So, Drew League or Rump Classic, and why? Starting five, and it's all Black women. Starting five. You can even bring a historical.
I could draft somebody.
Yeah, you could draft somebody from the Tribune if you want to. Starting five.
So.
I love it.
Yeah.
Unrivaled or WNBA?
Come on now.
The debate of should women get paid more? Why are they not getting paid more? And there are a lot of men who commented on there and was like, I'm gonna be honest, we don't watch it. Or they have to have a better product. What do you think about those people who say that?